The grand hall of the Galactic Conclave buzzed with whispers and quiet laughter. Thousands of alien representatives from across the known universe sat in rising tiers around the central speaking platform. The soft blue light from above cast strange shadows on their many different forms. Some had multiple limbs, others had skin that changed colors, and some didn't even have bodies but existed as swirling patterns of energy. Dr. Alice Warren tried to keep her hands from shaking as she adjusted her formal uniform. Next to her, Commander Peter Nelson stood tall, his jaw set firmly despite the mocking looks thrown their way. "They're not even trying to hide their amusement," Peter whispered. Alice nodded slightly. "Let them laugh. Soon they'll understand." This was Earth's third appearance before the Conclave since humans had achieved faster-than-light travel a century ago. The first two meetings had been polite but dismissive. Today would be different. Today they would reveal Project Folded Edge. The Conclave moderator, a tall being with silvery skin and 6 eyes arranged in a circle around its head, raised a long arm for silence. "The floor recognizes the representatives from Earth," the moderator announced, its voice translated through the universal communication system. Alice stepped forward, feeling the weight of 7 billion human lives on her shoulders. The holographic display activated as she began to speak. "Honored members of the Galactic Conclave, Earth thanks you for this opportunity to present our latest scientific breakthrough," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "We have successfully developed technology to access and navigate the 7th dimension." The silence lasted only 3 seconds before it broke. First came confused murmurs, then open laughter. A representative from the Arcturus Collective, one of the oldest and most advanced civilizations, actually stood up. "Perhaps there is a translation error," the Arcturian said, its voice dripping with condescension. "Surely the humans meant to say they've made improvements to standard 5th-dimensional fold technology." Alice shook her head. "No, we have moved beyond the limitations of 5th-dimensional physics. Our new ship, the Folded Edge, can access the 7th dimension directly." The laughter grew louder. Even the usually serious Rigelian delegation was making the crystal chime sound that passed for their version of laughter. The Arcturian representative spread its forearms in a gesture that needed no translation. Young species often confuse theoretical physics with practical application. The 7th dimension cannot be directly accessed by physical vessels. This is established science for the past 50,000 years. Peter stepped forward. "With respect, established science can be wrong." The holographic display shifted to show the basic design of the Folded Edge. Alice continued her presentation despite the interruptions and barely concealed mockery. "Our breakthrough came from understanding that previous approaches attempted to force conventional matter to behave in unconventional ways. Instead, we developed technology that allows the ship to exist partially outside normal spacetime, while still being controllable from within it." From the upper tiers, a member of the ancient Tellurian species spoke, its voice carrying the weight of a civilization millions of years old. "Child species, there are reasons why exploration of dimensions beyond the 6th was abandoned. Some doors are not meant to be opened." Alice felt a chill at these words but pressed on with the presentation. "We've successfully tested unmanned probes using this technology. Next month we will launch the first crewed mission." The reactions ranged from amused disbelief to concerned murmurs. No one took the humans seriously. In the observation gallery, Admiral Lucas Holt of Earth's Space Force watched silently. His weathered face revealed nothing, but his eyes narrowed slightly as he observed the reactions around the room. "Sir, they're not even considering the possibility that we're telling the truth," whispered his aide. Holt nodded slightly. "Good. The more they underestimate us, the better our position when the time comes." The moderator finally raised a hand to restore order. "The Conclave acknowledges Earth's ambitious claims. However, without empirical evidence, we cannot allocate resources to evaluate this technology. Are there any questions for the Earth delegation?" The questions that followed were not genuine inquiries but thinly veiled insults disguised as curiosity. Alice and Peter answered each one with professional calm, even as their frustration grew. As they left the chamber, Admiral Holt joined them in the corridor. "Well done," he said quietly. "You maintained your composure admirably." Alice let out a long breath. "They treated us like children playing with toys." Holt's lips curved into a slight smile. "Let them think that. Meanwhile, back home, the Folded Edge nears completion. In 6 weeks, when Captain Rodriguez and her crew make that first jump." He didn't finish the sentence, but his meaning was clear. The galaxy had laughed today. Soon it would gasp in astonishment. Deep, beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility hidden from both public knowledge and satellite surveillance, the air hummed with energy. The giant underground chamber glowed with blue light from hundreds of monitors, and the strange pulsing core at the center of what would soon be humanity's greatest achievement. Chief Engineer Samantha Wright wiped sweat from her forehead as she crawled out from under a complex array of machinery. Her hands were stained with a strange silvery fluid that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. "Pass me the quantum stabilizer," she called to her assistant. Nearby, Dr. Frank Miller stood before a wall-sized holographic display, his fingers moving quickly through a series of equations that would make most university professors dizzy. The numbers and symbols floated in the air, rearranging themselves as he worked. "The conclave thinks we're fools," Frank said without looking away from his work. "They believe no species can understand hyperdimensional mathematics until they've been spacefaring for at least 1,000 years. Samantha smiled as she adjusted a panel of glowing crystals. "They don't know about our secret weapon." Both of them turned to look at the center of the chamber, where a special section was separated by walls of a clear material stronger than steel. Inside, floating in what appeared to be open air, was a woman. Ellen Carter didn't look extraordinary, at first glance. She was of average height with simple brown hair cut short for practicality, but anyone looking at her eyes would immediately know she was different. They glowed with blue light, not from any technology but from within. Ellen was one of 50 humans born with a rare genetic mutation that scientists had only discovered 30 years ago. These individuals, nicknamed architects, could perceive reality in ways others couldn't. They could see beyond the normal 3 dimensions, their minds somehow able to comprehend spatial relationships that should be impossible for human brains to process. Frank walked over to the clear wall. "How's it going in there, Ellen?" Ellen's body slowly rotated in the air as if she were in zero gravity, though the room had normal Earth gravity. Her eyes were open but seeing something beyond the physical space around her. "I can see the folds clearly now," she said, her voice calm despite the impossible things she was perceiving. "The 7th-dimensional boundary is like a fabric that's been folded wrong. We need to adjust the harmonic frequency of the drive core by 0.03%. Samantha immediately turned to her console and made the adjustment. The core, in the center of the room, changed its pulsing pattern slightly. Ellen smiled. "That's it. Perfect." Admiral Holt entered the chamber, followed by Dr. Warren and Commander Nelson, just returned from the conclave meeting. Their formal uniforms looked out of place among the engineers and scientists in their practical work clothes. "How close are we?" Holt asked, walking directly to the main control station. Frank closed his equations with a wave of his hand. "We're ahead of schedule. The dimensional fold matrix is stable at 87% efficiency. 2 more weeks and we'll be ready for the final test." Holt nodded, his face serious. "Make it 1 week, the situation has changed." The room went quiet. Samantha stopped her work and stood up. "Sir, rushing this could be dangerous. We've had 3 failures already." Everyone remembered the previous attempts. The first test had melted the entire drive core. The second had created a spatial distortion that made everyone within 50 feet experience time at different rates for 3 hours. The third had been the worst. A small unmanned probe had simply vanished, taking a 10-foot sphere of the testing chamber with it. Holt's expression didn't change. "Intel just confirmed that the Janari Empire has scout ships at the edge of our solar system. They're watching us." The room filled with nervous whispers. The Janari were known throughout the galaxy as conquerors who annexed any civilization they deemed useful and destroyed those they didn't. Ellen lowered herself to the floor inside her chamber. the blue glow in her eyes dimming slightly as she focused on the present reality. "The ship will be ready," she said with quiet confidence. "This time the seventh fold will hold." Dr. Warren looked through the clear wall at Ellen. "Are you sure? We can't afford another failure." Ellen placed her hand against the barrier, matching her palm to Warren's on the other side. "The other architects, and I have seen it. Not just the technology working, but what comes after." Her eyes flared bright. Captain Greg Patterson sat stiffly in his chair at Earth's Defense Headquarters in Geneva. The large underground room was filled with high-ranking military officers and government officials from around the world. The air felt heavy with tension, as holographic displays showed star maps and enemy positions. Greg's eyes were fixed on the main screen, which showed dozens of red dots slowly moving through the Tau Ceti system. Each dot represented a Janari warship. "As you can see," said Intelligence Officer Olivia Chen as she pointed to the display, "the Janari fleet has established forward bases on 3 moons in the Tau Ceti system. This gives them a staging ground, just 12 light-years from Earth." She tapped a control, and the display changed to show a closer view of the alien ships. They were massive, shaped like arrowheads with strange bulges along their sides. The smallest was 3 times the size of Earth's largest battleship. "How long do we have?" asked General Susan Baker, her weathered face showing no emotion. Though everyone knew the gravity of the situation, Olivia's face grew more serious. "Based on their usual tactics and the speed they're building their forward base, our best estimate is 8 months before their main invasion fleet arrives. However, it could be as little as 6 months if they decide to fast-track their plans." The room fell silent. Everyone present knew what this meant. Earth's combined space forces wouldn't stand a chance against the Janari fleet. In the last century, 12 other civilizations had fallen to the Janari Empire. Some had been fighting wars in space for thousands of years before humans had even invented the wheel. "What about the Galactic Conclave?" asked a diplomat from the African Union. "Surely they won't stand by and let another civilization be conquered." Admiral Holt, who had just returned from the Conclave meeting, shook his head. "The Conclave has offered deep concern and moral support, but no actual help. Several representatives hinted that we should consider peaceful surrender to minimize loss of life." Greg felt anger rise in his chest. Peaceful surrender? Do they know what happens to species that surrender to the Janari? Everyone did know. The Janari didn't destroy planets or kill all inhabitants. Many considered their approach worse. They took the most useful members of a conquered species and enhanced them through biological modification until they were perfect servants. The rest were left on their home planets, allowed to live under strict control as a source for future servants. "The truth is," Holt continued, "many Conclave members secretly believe humanity would be better off absorbed into the Janari Empire than allowed to continue our dangerously aggressive technological development. They see our dimensional research as risky and unpredictable." General Baker leaned forward. "Then we stand alone. What about the folded edge? Is it ready?" All eyes turned to Dr. Warren, who had been sitting quietly at the end of the table. "We've accelerated the timeline," she said. "The ship will be ready for its first crewed test in 14 days. "And if it works?" Greg asked the question everyone was thinking. One ship, no matter how advanced, can't stop an entire invasion fleet. Dr. Warren exchanged looks with Holt before answering. "According to the theoretical models and what the architects have shown us, the folded edge's 7th-dimensional drive isn't just a new form of propulsion. It can create spatial distortions that could disable or even destroy enemy ships." "You're talking about using it as a weapon," Greg said, understanding dawning on him. Warren nodded slowly. "The Janari ships use 5th-dimensional technology for their faster-than-light drives. Our 7th-dimensional field should disrupt their systems completely. At least that's the theory." "And if the theory is wrong?" asked General Baker. "Then humanity joins the list of civilizations conquered by the Janari Empire," Holt said bluntly. Greg looked again at the red dots on the display, imagining the alien crews inside those ships, confident in their superiority, and already planning how to divide Earth's resources and people. "When do we tell the public?" he asked. "We don't," said the president's representative, speaking for the first time. "Not until the folded edge has proven itself. We don't want to cause worldwide panic if our last hope fails its test." As the HFY meeting ended, Greg pulled Dr. Warren aside. "Do you really believe this will work?" he asked quietly. Warren's eyes showed both fear and determination. "The architects believe it will, and right now, their vision of reality is the only advantage we have over an enemy that has conquered worlds for longer than human civilization has existed." The launch facility buzzed with activity as hundreds of technicians made final preparations. From the outside, the folded edge didn't look as impressive as many had expected. The ship was sleek and relatively small compared to Earth's regular space vessels. Its dark hull had a strange shimmering quality that made it difficult to focus on directly, as if the eyes wanted to slide away from it. Captain Lisa Rodriguez walked through the final security checkpoint, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. As an experienced pilot who had flown everything Earth had built for space travel, she had never felt nervous before a mission. Today was different. Today, she would command humanity's greatest technological achievement, or its most spectacular failure. "Captain on deck," called Navigator John Martinez as Lisa entered the bridge. The crew of 20 specialists stood at attention. They were Earth's best, scientists, engineers, and pilots chosen from thousands of qualified candidates. Among them stood 2 architects, their eyes glowing with that now familiar blue light, marking them as humans who could see beyond normal reality. "At ease," Lisa said, taking her seat in the captain's chair. "Status report." "All systems nominal," reported John from the navigation station. "Dimensional fold matrix is stable at 98% efficiency." Lisa nodded and opened the communication channel. "Bridge to control, we are ready to begin pre-launch sequence." In the observation bunker half a mile away, Dr. Warren and Commander Nelson watched the proceedings through reinforced windows and video feeds. Around them, dozens of scientists monitored data streams flowing from the ship's sensors. "I still think I should be on board," Dr. Warren muttered, not for the first time. Commander Nelson shook his head. "You're too valuable to risk on the first test flight. If something goes wrong, we'll need you to figure out why." Warren knew he was right, but it didn't make watching any easier. This ship contained 5 years of her work, her dreams, and possibly humanity's only hope against the coming invasion. "The architects report all dimensional boundaries are stable," said a technician monitoring the special crew members. "They can see the fold paths clearly." Back on the bridge, Lisa completed the pre-launch checklist. "Engine room, status?" Chief Engineer Ryan Dawson's voice came through the speaker. "Drive core is running perfectly, Captain. The dimensional matrix is aligned and ready. We can initiate the fold whenever you give the word." Lisa took a deep breath. This was it. No more simulations, no more unmanned tests. They were about to attempt something no species in the known galaxy had achieved: purposeful navigation through the 7th dimension. "All crew, secure for dimensional transit," she ordered. "Architect, Taylor, please confirm our exit coordinates." One of the architects, a young man with dark hair and glowing blue eyes, nodded. "Exit coordinates are locked in, Captain. We will reappear at the edge of the solar system, just beyond Pluto's orbit. If successful, they would travel a distance that would take conventional ships weeks in just seconds. Initiating 7th-dimensional drive in 3, 2, 1. Lisa's voice remained steady despite knowing that history was being made. She pressed the activation control. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a strange sensation washed over everyone on the bridge. It wasn't painful, but it felt as if reality itself became soft and flexible. Colors shifted slightly, and light seemed to bend around objects. Some crew members later reported hearing a sound like distant music, though the ship's recorders picked up nothing. From the observation bunker, Dr. Warren and the others watched as reality appeared to ripple around the folded edge. There was no flash of light, no dramatic effect like in science fiction movies. Instead, the ship seemed to gently fold into itself, becoming smaller and smaller until it simply wasn't there anymore. "Transit successful," reported a technician, her voice filled with awe. The ship has left our dimensional plane. The bunker erupted in cheers, but Warren held her breath. Leaving was only half the challenge. They still had to arrive safely at their destination. Exactly 2 minutes and 17 seconds later, precisely as calculated, sensors at the edge of the solar system detected the folded edge reappearing. The ship had traversed billions of miles in less time than it takes to make a cup of coffee. On the bridge, the crew broke into spontaneous applause and cheers. Lisa allowed herself a smile of relief and pride before calling for quiet. Navigation. Confirm our position, she ordered. John checked his instruments. We are exactly where we planned to be, Captain. The jump was perfect. The celebration continued for several more seconds until one of the sensor operators called out urgently, Captain, we have an unknown contact at coordinates 227 by 43. It just activated its engines and appears to be moving away at high speed. Lisa's joy vanished instantly. On screen, the grand chamber of the galactic conclave had never been so chaotic. Representatives from 200 species shouted over each other, some standing on their seats, others changing colors with emotion. The normal order and dignity of the ancient institution had completely broken down. On the main display screen, footage of the folded edges dimensional jump played on repeat. The recording, captured by monitoring stations belonging to several different species, showed the human ship disappearing in that strange rippling effect, and then reappearing billions of miles away just seconds later. Order. I demand order, shouted the conclave moderator, its voice amplified to cut through the noise. The silver-skinned being slammed a ceremonial staff against the floor 3 times, finally getting the chamber to quiet down. In the center of the chamber, Dr. Alice Warren stood calmly despite the hostile atmosphere she had been summoned to. This emergency session immediately after the test flight's success. The folded edge itself remained in orbit around Earth, already being studied for any damage or wear from its historic journey. The human vessel clearly violated dimensional safety protocols established by this body 10,000 years ago, bellowed the Rigelian ambassador, its crystalline form flashing angry red patterns. No species should access dimensional planes, beyond their evolutionary comprehension. Shouts of agreement came from many delegates. Others looked more thoughtful, even impressed. Earth has broken no laws of the conclave, Dr. Warren replied evenly. The safety protocols you mention are recommendations, not binding regulations. We simply followed scientific principles to their logical conclusion. Principles that the rest of us determined were too dangerous to pursue, countered the ancient Tellurian representative, floating forward in its gravity pod. There are reasons why the pathways to the 7th dimension were abandoned eons ago. Dr. Warren looked directly at the Tellurian, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. With respect, those reasons were based on the limitations of technology that existed millions of years ago. Human ingenuity found a different approach. Ingenuity? Scoffed a delegate from the Arcturus Collective. Or reckless disregard for cosmic stability? Your people have been spacefaring for barely a century, yet you tamper with forces that could tear holes in reality itself. The debate continued for hours. Some species demanded immediate sanctions against Earth. Others wanted the technology shared with all conclave members. A few suggested that humans should be confined to their own solar system until they had matured sufficiently. Meanwhile, in a private chamber adjacent to the main hall, Admiral Holt met secretly with representatives from 5 of the middle-tier powers in the galaxy, species that were neither the oldest and most powerful nor the youngest and most vulnerable. The balance of power is shifting, said the representative from Proxima Centauri, its 4 eyes blinking in sequence. For too long, the ancient races have dictated what technologies are appropriate for younger species. Holt nodded. Earth is willing to share certain aspects of our dimensional research with trusted allies. Not the complete technology, but enough to begin your own development programs. And what do you want in return? Asked the Syrian delegate cautiously. Support in the coming conflict, Holt replied grimly. The Janari Empire witnessed our test. Their scout ship has undoubtedly reported back to their fleet by now. The representatives exchanged concerned glances. Everyone knew the Janari reputation. They will accelerate their invasion plans, said the delegate from Tau Ceti, a system directly in the path between Earth and Janari space. Our analysts predict they will not risk allowing humans time to build more ships with this technology. Back in the main chamber, Dr. Warren faced increasingly hostile questioning. How many of these vessels do you plan to construct? Demanded the Rigelian. Before she could answer, an aide rushed in and whispered urgently to the conclave moderator. The chamber fell silent as the moderator's 6 eyes widened in apparent shock. This session is temporarily adjourned, the moderator announced. We have just received word that the Janari battle fleet has begun moving. Their trajectory indicates they have abandoned their staging area and are proceeding directly toward Earth at maximum speed. The chamber erupted once more, but now the tone had changed. Fear replaced anger in many voices. Dr. Warren's communication device buzzed with an urgent message from Earth. Reading it, her face paled slightly before she composed herself. How long until they reach Earth? Asked the Tellurian representative, suddenly sounding concerned rather than condemning. At their current speed, the moderator replied. They will arrive at the Sol system in approximately 7 weeks. The previous timeline of months had just shrunk dramatically. Earth now had less than 2 months to prepare for an invasion by the most ruthless conquering force in the known galaxy. Dr. Warren looked around at the suddenly somber faces. Now perhaps you understand why we developed this technology. It wasn't just scientific curiosity. It was survival. The sky above Earth looked peaceful, but the planet was anything but calm. For 7 weeks, humanity had prepared for the coming battle. Cities had been partially evacuated, defense systems activated, and every available ship moved into defensive positions. It wasn't enough. Everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. The Janari arrived 3 days earlier than even the most pessimistic predictions. Their massive warships tore through the outer defense line near Neptune in less than an hour. Humanity's conventional forces fought bravely, but were hopelessly outmatched. The alien weapon systems were simply too powerful, their shields too strong. Aboard the Folded Edge, Captain Lisa Rodriguez watched the tactical display with a grim expression. Her ship had been upgraded and repaired after its historic test flight. It was now the command vessel for Earth's desperate defense. Neptune outpost has fallen, reported Navigator John Martinez, his voice tight with emotion. Mars' defense fleet is engaging the enemy's forward elements, but they're taking heavy losses. Lisa nodded, keeping her face neutral for the sake of her crew. Position us for dimensional jump to these coordinates. She sent the data to John's station. We need to hit their support ships before they can deploy their planet crackers. The Puig. Folded Edge was Earth's only operational ship with the 7th-Dimensional drive. 5 more vessels were under construction, but they were weeks away from completion. This battle would be won or lost before they were ready. Captain, called one of the architects, I can see distortions in their fleet formation. They're trying to predict where we'll appear next. Since the initial test flight, the Folded Edge had engaged in a series of hit-and-run attacks against the advancing Janari fleet. The ship would appear, fire its weapons at a key target, and disappear before the enemy could respond effectively. It was the only tactic that had shown any success. General Baker is requesting assistance near the moon, said Communications Officer Diane Foster. The main Janari battle group is breaking through. Lisa made a quick decision. Tell Earth Defense. Command, we're on our way. Navigation. Plot a jump to lunar orbit. Weapons. Prepare all systems for immediate firing upon arrival. Dimensional drive ready for activation, reported Chief Engineer Ryan Dawson from Engineering. But Captain, the core temperature is running higher than normal. We've made 17 jumps in the last 6 hours. The system wasn't designed for this kind of continuous operation. Lisa understood the implications. How many more jumps can we safely make? Ryan hesitated. Maybe 3, possibly 4. After that, we risk a cascade failure. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what a cascade failure of the dimensional drive would mean. At best, they'd be stranded. At worst, the ship and everyone on it would be scattered across multiple dimensions. Then we make them count, Lisa said firmly. Initiate jump to the moon, The now familiar sensation of reality bending washed over the crew as the folded edge disappeared from its position and reappeared in lunar orbit. The scene that greeted them was chaotic. Earth's defense fleet was engaged in a desperate battle against 5 massive Janari warships. Explosions flashed in the silence of space as human vessels were torn apart by enemy weapons. "Target the lead vessel and fire everything we have," Lisa ordered. The folded edge unleashed its advanced weapons, catching the Janari ship by surprise. The enemy vessel's shields flared and collapsed under the assault. But before Lisa could order a second volley, the remaining Janari ships turned their attention to the folded edge. "Multiple weapons locks," shouted the tactical officer. "They're all targeting us." "Evasive action," Lisa commanded. "Prepare for emergency jump." The ship shuddered as several energy beams struck its shields. Alarms blared throughout the vessel. "Drive core temperature critical." Ryan's voice came over the comm. "We can't make another jump right now?" Lisa gripped her command chair as another hit rocked the ship. "How long until we can jump?" "At least 3 minutes to cool the core enough for safe operation," Ryan replied. Lisa knew they wouldn't last. 3 minutes under concentrated fire from 4 Janari warships. She looked at the tactical display, searching desperately for options. That's when Ellen Carter, serving as dimensional navigator, spoke up. "Captain, I believe we can access a deeper fold than previously attempted." "Initiating 8th-Dimensional fold," Ellen announced, her voice strangely calm despite the chaos around them. Captain Rodriguez watched as Ellen's eyes blazed with blue fire brighter than ever before. The architect's hands moved across her control panel with impossible speed, making adjustments that only she could understand. "Everyone, brace yourselves," Lisa warned. "This is uncharted territory." The folded edge disappeared, but instead of reappearing elsewhere as it had done before, something entirely different happened. The ship materialized inside the shield envelope of the Janari flagship, an impossible maneuver that bypassed all conventional defenses. "Now," Ellen shouted, activating the full potential of the drive. What happened next would be debated by scientists across the galaxy for centuries to come. Reality itself seemed to scream in protest, as the dimensional drive created a cascade effect that spread outward from the folded edge. The laws of physics bent and warped in ways that defied explanation. The Janari ships weren't simply destroyed. They were folded out of conventional reality. Their matter compressed and expanded across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously, creating a spectacle that human language lacked words to describe. It was as if the ships existed and didn't exist at the same time, their components stretching across dimensions beyond human comprehension. When it was over, more than half the enemy armada had simply vanished. The remaining ships, those at the edges of the effect, drifted powerless in space, their systems completely disabled by dimensional distortions they were never designed to withstand. Inside the folded edge, the lights flickered back on after a moment of complete darkness. Smoke filled the bridge as damaged systems sparked and hissed. "Status report," Lisa called, pulling herself back into her chair. She had a cut on her forehead that dripped blood down her face, but she ignored it. "Drive. Core is completely burned out," reported Ryan from engineering, his voice hoarse. "Whatever Ellen did, it pushed the system far beyond its design limits." Lisa looked to Ellen, who lay slumped at her station, exhausted but conscious. "What did you do?" Ellen's eyes had returned to their normal color, the blue glow completely gone. "I opened a window to the 8th dimension and something looked back." She shivered slightly. "We should be careful about doing that again." Reports came in from across the solar system. The remaining Janari ships were in full retreat, abandoning their invasion plan entirely. For the first time in its long history of conquest, the Janari Empire had not just been defeated, it had been terrified. As the folded edge limped back to Earth, the crew witnessed the launch of humanity's new fleet. 50 vessels, each housing an architect, each capable of bending the laws of physics in ways the galaxy had thought impossible. The burnt-out drive core of the folded edge had provided valuable data that allowed engineers to create more stable and powerful versions of the dimensional technology. 2 weeks later, an emergency session of the conclave convened. The tone had changed dramatically. The species that had once mocked Earth now sought alliances, tech-sharing agreements, and mutual defense pacts. The Janari Empire, for the first time in its long history of conquest, sued for peace. Admiral Holt stood before the conclave now as Earth's official representative. Gone was the defensive posture of previous meetings. He spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needed to prove anything. Humanity doesn't seek dominance or revenge for your previous dismissal of us, he stated calmly. We seek only peaceful coexistence and the advancement of all sentient life. A murmur ran through the assembly. The Arcturus representative spoke up. And if we refuse your terms, will you unleash these dimensional weapons upon the rest of us? Holt smiled. That's the difference between humans and conquerors like the Janari. We don't see dimensional technology as a weapon but as a doorway. As if on cue, the newly repaired folded edge appeared in the space above the conclave station, but this time, it wasn't alone. Surrounding it were ships of obviously alien design, yet each equipped with unmistakable dimensional fold technology. Gasps and exclamations filled the chamber as the delegates saw the impossible fleet. Allow me to introduce our friends from what you might call parallel branes of reality, Holt continued as the chamber erupted in astonishment. They've been waiting a long time for a species to break the dimensional barrier properly, and now they'd like to invite us all to join a much larger community. Ellen Carter, standing behind Holt, smiled as she looked at the assembled representatives of the galaxy's civilizations. Their faces showed the same shock and wonder that humans had felt when they first made contact with these beings from beyond conventional dimensions. The universe is so much bigger than any of us imagined, she said softly, and now we all get to explore it together. The galaxy had indeed stopped laughing. Now, it watched in awe as humanity led the way into a future none of them had dared to imagine. The end.